everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Candid Kaya. Today, I am here with Dr. Danielle, who's going to tell us more about her journey to becoming a professor. If you are interested in hearing more about Dr. Danielle's journey, then stay tuned. So, hello, Danielle.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Can you just tell the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So, my name is Danielle King. I am an assistant professor at a Research One institution. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, and after high school in New Orleans, I went on to Spelman College and then Michigan State for my master's and PhD in organizational psychology.
Awesome. So you just mentioned basically you are a doctor, you have a PhD, and then because of all of that, you are a professor at a R1, you said, a Research One institution. Can you
Yep.
tell us what that is or what that entails, really?
Yeah, so basically, academia, there are a lot of different options, which is nice. So there are teaching institutions, and then there are more research focused institutions. So that means primarily my job is to create research to publish in academic journals. I also teach, but a lot more of my time is spent running my research laboratory.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying. So just tell us as well, okay, you are a professor. It took you quite some time, academic time, and many years of education to get to where you got to. So just tell us what inspired you to become a professor in the first place.
Yeah. So I would say in high school, I took an AP psychology class, and I was like, this is the one class I'm really excited to read about and read for and do the work. And so that's how I decided to major in psych in college. And then in undergrad, I learned that, if I really want to practice in psychology or do something in the field, advanced education is basically required, either a master's or a PhD. And then I wanted to have the option. I wasn't sure that I wanted to be a professor, but I wanted that option. So I went on for the PhD. And then my third year of graduate school, I taught a class. I knew I already liked research, but I wasn't sure if I liked teaching. So after teaching, I was like, oh, I like this too. So then I decided to become a professor.
Okay. So, and then just tell us about your journey to becoming a professor. When did you start? How long have you been doing it? And what do you like the most about it?
Yes, so I started my current professor role in the summer of 2018. So I defended my dissertation in June of 2018, and then I started this job in July of 2018. And I like it a lot. I like the intellectual freedom. So I get to research any question I'm interested in. If tomorrow I'm like, I want to understand this relationship or these variables or this human process, I can study it. I have graduate students in my lab, I have undergraduate students who help and who I train in research. So I like that ability to focus on the things that I care about and that are important to me. And then there's flexibility. So I like that about my job. I get to decide when my classes are and really structure my schedule when, to follow my flow. And when I feel most productive is usually when I work. So I like that a lot.
And can we just sidebar this? Danielle became a doctor at 27, y'all. Anything is possible.
From
That's
pre-K to
amazing.
PhD, never stop, which is like exhausting, and it's not the right way, right? It's whatever works for you. But I knew if I paused, if I worked, if I started making real money, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna go back. So I was like, let me just, and I like school. So I was like, let me just finish. And then the PhD is the highest degree you can get. So I'm like, I'm gonna get it. I'm never gonna regret getting it. So I'm happy I'm done. I'll say
Yes, amen.
that.
Speaking of you just going straight through, just tell us a little bit about how you kind of prepared for that journey. What was your process to applying to graduate school? How did you approach it? And what type of scholarships and other fellowships did you use?
That's a great question because one thing that people don't often talk about or know is that most, solid PhD programs are paid. So you shouldn't usually be paying to get a PhD. You are paid a stipend and you get your, tuition covered because you're working as a research assistant of your advisor of the department. And so that was something that I definitely weighed. A lot of master's programs in organizational psychology were expensive. So I'm like, I could be paid, I'm gonna work, but I could be paid to get this degree, to get education, to get training. And so that was also a part of, weighing decisions on PhD. And some programs offer full, 5 years of funding, which I was, once I heard I got 5 years of funding from Michigan State, I was like, well, I'm going to Michigan State. And, other programs they offered, 3 years guaranteed. And then they were like, we'll definitely figure out the other two. So that varies, but that was really helpful in my decision to consider that as a really beneficial option, I think, for PhD.
Right. And let's just talk just a little bit about your PhD experience in general. As you said, you went straight after college. So was it a transition? I mean, you still were in study mode, I'm sure, but how did you transition? Did you have a community?
Yeah.
Did you feel like you belonged as a Black woman? Just tell us a little bit more about
Yeah, really good questions. Of course, you are great at this. But I think that for me, the biggest shift was learning that undergrad is all about classes and PhD is a lot more unstructured. So once you get to that level of training, yeah, you have classes, but most of your time is research. And how many projects I was on and, how fast those things were moving was on me. So I had to create a lot of my own structure where I felt undergrad was very structured. I was told, you do this in these classes, you get A's, you're good, right? So PhD is a lot more unstructured. So that was hard for me when I got there because I was like, oh, it's up to me. Like I got to figure it out. But that also means finding balance because that means you could work constantly or you could never work really, and people wouldn't know until it was time for annual evaluations. So I had to find my work life wellness balance. And coming from Spelman, it was hard because I went from an HBCU to being the only Black girl who was students or faculty. There were nobody who looked like me. There were no other Black females. So that was rough. And it was a very stark contrast. So finding other grad student groups for minority students, diverse groups, really leaning on my support system from family and from Spelman and from the AUC is what helped a lot with that transition.
that. All right, Danielle, thank you for those insights. Let's just take it back just a little. I just want you to speak about okay, you had that PhD experience, you got there. That was you got to that destination. But tell us a little bit about how much did grades matter to help you get to where you got to in high school and in college?
Yeah. So grades are important. They're not the end all be all, but they are an indicator for both, people in selection in undergrads and in PhD programs of motivation and effort. And so it's like a proxy we have one way we try to assess cognitive ability. It's not a perfect measure of it at all. And professors should recognize that. But that's one indicator we look at to see is this person going to work, are they going to learn strategies to study effectively, are they going to put in the effort. So grades are important, so doing as best as you can in classes would be really helpful.
So, Danielle, also, just as we close out more about your PhD journey, I'm just curious, in your opinion, does the college or institution you choose to get your undergrad at matter in how far you can go in this professor world? Can you go to anywhere and teach at a Research One institution like you are or not?
That's a really good question. It's something that I think really depends on the person who's, making those judgment calls and selection later. But I will say that it should not, right? So if you are performing, you have the grades, and in grad school, if you are getting, stellar teaching evaluations and you're making those, getting publications, the opportunities are there. And it should not depend so much on prestige or university name, but really about what's under your control and the things that you've contributed in your education.
Okay. And just can you just tell us, in your opinion, as you are a professor, what characteristics really do make a good professor?
That's a good question. I think that intellectual curiosity, right? So being just curious about the world around you and wanting to overthink things, right? Like wanting to ask why about everything and try to figure it out is a big part of what fuels me. When research gets tough, I'm like, I really want to know the answers to this. So I got to see it through. Like I got to finish. I got to, I got to get the data. I got to find a way to recruit and get creative because I want to know the answer to this question. um Intrinsic motivation, so like I said, being willing to create the structure for yourself and saying like, I'm this feels like a good fit for me, like I like this career, I like research, I like teaching. I think those things are important so that it doesn't wear on your well-being, the hard work of it. And then adaptability, right? Like every student is different. Every semester, as we've seen over the last year, is different. So the ways that you do your research and teaching and the statistics you have to learn, the things you have to do to be successful change. So I think being willing to adapt is important.
Dr. Danielle, now I want to ask you for a little bit of your advice. What can
Mhm.
someone who is a college student today start doing right now, in addition to the research experience that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, so some things that you can do immediately are building relationships and talking to people who are professors in the field that you're interested in. So asking them about things that help in this journey, building those relationships. Of course, later you will need letters of recommendation. So building relationships with your faculty members helps a lot in the journey. So you get clarity on like what does this look like and is it a good fit for you. I also took a GRE prep class in undergrad, and I thought that was really helpful. So starting to study for those standardized tests as early as you can, I think is really helpful.
Okay. All right. So we know that there's so many great teaching positions, and they can also be so hard to come by. So, what advice do you have for those who are qualified and aspire to be a professor to get the right position for them?
Yeah. And I'm glad you said right position for them, because like a good job or a good professorship role for me is different from what someone else would want. So I would say getting really clear for yourself on what are your non-negotiables, what are the things that are most important, and then when you figure those out, whether it's location, whether it's pay, whether it's teaching load, whatever that, or the type of university or the size of the university, whatever it is, networking, of course, building relationships with people at those universities, expressing that interest, and getting a lot of feedback on your job market materials. So usually we have to submit a teaching statement, a research statement, a CV. So getting feedback, getting help with those materials as much as you can, and then practicing your job talk. So we're asked to come to these universities and give like usually a 45-minute talk on our research. So I practiced that like 10 times with different groups of people, so that it could flow, so that I could practice, different questions and how to remain open and, answer those questions fully. I think that would be helpful.
Okay. All right, Danielle. And so, my last question as it pertains to your advice is just going to be, what advice do you have for aspiring educators everywhere?
Yeah. I think that we should pursue the things that we care about. So, really interrogating our intentions with the things that we teach, the ways that we approach teaching, and care for all of our students, right? So that we really show up authentically in the classroom, right? And that creates, I think, a psychologically safe space for our students when we can do that and we can be there as ourselves and responsibly have tough conversations as well in the classroom.
Awesome. Well, I did lie. I do have one more question.
Okay.
And it's to finish my sentence, and that is, as a professor, I hope to.
I hope to contribute knowledge and information that is useful and that improves somebody's work life experience in the future.
Perfect. Words. All right, Danielle, thank you so much for this interview. Just tell our viewers how they can see some of your works and keep up with you.
Yeah, so my name on Instagram is Doc, DOC, the letter D, and then my last name, King. And that there is a link there to my Google Scholar, which lists publications, and most of them are linked as well. And then also lectures that I've done that are available online.
Thank you again, everyone, for tuning into this interview with Dr. Danielle. We hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll see you again next time.
Bye. Thank you.